how did you want your rich band history to be represented?
Frank Marshall and a couple other people did the documentary. Um, and it's a fantastic, you know, vision of the history of the Beach Boys, which started as a family, started in actually we all used to get together at my home because we had a grand piano, an organ, and a harp in the living room, and it was a family hobby to get together and sing songs and harmonize and stuff. And it's become a lifelong tradition, like not a tradition, lifelong profession. And we've been very blessed and very fortunate.
The history of the band is so interesting because it never was a linear history. There were almost two bands in one at a time. So I was wondering, when you watched the documentary, were there parts of your own history that were surprising to you?
We kind of know the story. You know, it just reaffirms everything that I love about the band. And now it's going to go all around the world, you know, in the 2024, what we were all about. And, you know, the first thing that when I became aware of the band, I was taking my surfboard out of my car, you know, and we only had instrumental music like Walk, Don't Run by the Ventures. And I'm going, oh my gosh, there's a song. It's got words. Surf music sings now. And it turned into the Beach Boys.
You were such a famous band, but are there misconceptions about the Beach Boys, things that the documentary would help to clarify maybe to a new generation?
I think there's always misconceptions about every important band. You know, people have their favorite personnel in the band or personalities. And so it doesn't give you the whole group perspective like our documentary does. I think that gives a more complete story of the Beach Boys.
You describe your audiences from 8 to 80, so there's always very young people and old people. You have a huge fan base of all ages. Right. Do you think that this documentary will help to extend that even further?
It will extend, yes, and it'll extend it around the world. I mean, you're calling from Germany. We've done interviews with people all over the world, and Disney Plus will be broadcasting this all over the world, and that is a tremendous blessing for us. And it portrays not only our music and our personalities and the history, but it currently informs people what the Beach Boys are all about, and it's all about, you know, good vibrations and fun, and all these great songs, like hundreds of them, that are a result of the love of harmonizing together and that special sound that the Beach Boys have.
Time marches on, but our vibe is still alive and well. And thanks to Disney, it's going to go all around the world again.
And a very interesting part of the documentary was when you talked about pet sounds. And obviously this was a record that changed the course of pop music sonically and production values. When the Beatles came out through Sgt. Pepper, and in the documentary it said that this shouldn't be seen as competition, but more as camaraderie, as giving each other a lift, so to say. Yeah. How did you see that at that time when you released it? How did you experience this whole thing?
Well, Rolling Stone magazine did the 500 albums of all time, and Sgt. Pepper was #1. Pet Sounds is #2 out of 500. That's really good company. Of course, I would like a recount so anyway, no, I spent time in India with Maharishi, and the Beatles were there, and George Harrison, Bob, let's see, George, John, Paul, they were there for most of the time. Ringo had gone back home, I think. But Paul came down to the breakfast table singing Back in the USSR. And I gave him a couple of ideas, and he made a great song, which I love singing. And so we loved each other's music. And we understood there was a competition or a rivalry, but it was positive. It wasn't negative at all.
I had 2 copies of Pet Sounds that I took to London. It hadn't been released in Europe or England. And I played it for John and Paul twice, and they absolutely loved it. So no competition, just great friendship from music, through music.
Yeah. Appreciation.
Oh yeah.
The Beach Boys have such a rich but also non-linear history. So, as a filmmaker, what is the challenge of making a documentary about a band that has been two bands for a while, as it seemed?
Yeah, that is the challenge of telling the whole story. How to weave in and out the different members that came and went, how to, try and tell the full story of the band. But that's what I love about making documentaries, the freedom that you have, to discover and tell the story.
How much did the band take part of the concept of the documentary? Did you have full freedom? Did the band say anything what they wanted in the documentary?
No, there were moments that they were very helpful. And I would, be talking about a certain story and they say, well, we have a photograph or did you talk to this person? So again, it's this journey of discovery, unlike my day job where I have a script and I know what we're shooting and saying every day. But the band was very helpful.
Now, there's a very emotional scene at the end of the documentary. We don't want to spoil things, but Brian Wilson appears for a short while. So my question is, can you talk a bit about that scene on the beach where the whole band meets?
Yeah, it was my dream as I got to know the guys and start telling their story. I said, I really feel like I want to try and get them all back together. And we were able to pull it off, and it was as magical as it is in the movie. It was really like nothing had changed. They laughed and hugged and cried and told stories and even sang songs there on the beach. It was an amazing afternoon.
Um, Regarding Brian Wilson, was there any chance, I mean, without being, of course, with being discreet, but was there any chance to show him the documentary, maybe in the early stages a while ago, or did he have any input?
I think he's probably all the band members have seen it, and I'm pretty certain Brian has seen it. And he was great. He had us into his home, and it was really nice to meet and chat with him. It was 2 years ago, though.
When you look at the history of the Beach Boys, what would you say, in your view, is the most surprising thing about them?
I think the most surprising thing to me was that there were really two bands. The band that was on tour and the band that was home, but that was anchored by Brian being at home and writing because he didn't like to tour. I also had bands back in those days, and we loved the tour. It was, you're getting out of the house away from your parents and everything. I couldn't imagine staying at home. So it was interesting to me that it's the only group that I know that there were two of them that may have been what created their unique sound. But the fact that the energy that came from touring, those guys came back and then sang those parts and sometimes played, but mostly sang. That's what made it unique, I think.
And this ambiguity of having two bands, do you think that's also very tricky for the history books? How do you think the Beach Boys should be remembered in the history books of popular culture?
Well, I think you have to remember them for the songs they wrote and the songs, it's a group effort that if you take one or two of them out, it's not the same group. So you have this amazing family story, I think, because you add Mike in there as the cousin, and that's unique. So you have to think of them as a group with, Brian as the producer, head creator, but also Mike writing a lot of the lyrics, and Al and Carl and Bruce. They're all in there contributing to that sound, to that Beach Boys sound. So you have to see it as a unit.
Over what period of time did you make the documentary, and how was your working process like? Was it a lot of digging in the archives for yourself as well? How did you do it?
Yeah, it's been about a 3-year project. I started working with my co-director, Tom Zimney. We had done Johnny Cash doc together, and we started talking about the Beach Boys. And because I was in California and he was in New York, we started working together to try and pull this off. And that's when I went and I talked to Irving Azoff at Iconic. And so there's a lot of teams that came together. It was a real team effort to pull this off and to get everybody on board.